the people that really need it probably wouldn't be able to afford $100 at one time.
Okay.
And even some of the higher numbers that have been mentioned.
Well, just a couple comments. I think that everyone in this room, almost everyone, would agree with you on it should just be limited to low-income people, but you actually have to have enough people vote for that, which is impossible. I think it might be impossible unless there's a ground roots effort from the public to put it forward.
Well, on that note, I think that you have to get all your ducks in a row and present a valid case. You can't just say we need more money, so we're going to do this. You have to give if we can't get any more money, these are the services you'll lose.
Right.
That kind of, you have to say what the consequences on both sides.
Yeah.
And
then to go back to what you said before about the state reimbursing us, the state's never reimbursed us for senior sales tax.
No, not a sales tax. That's the property tax.
Yeah, just the property tax. I just wanted to
That
sure everyone
That was my point, was on the property tax. The budget item is the loss of the funds from the state, and it wasn't a property tax, the exemption, it wasn't a property tax exemption.
Yeah.
It was, you lose money because the state says reduce the value of their property,
Right.
but it's not a tax.
Yeah. And we're actually losing over $400,000 for
Yeah, the
that.
new one is $445,000 this next year.
But we're not talking about the...
No, but it was brought up, the $380,000 was mentioned last week as one of the exemptions.
So that property tax thing is an unfunded mandate, basically.
Right.
State, yeah.
And that won't be resolved until the borough and the state attorneys get together and...
Took place, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But anyway, I think a more reasonable fee,
okay.
10, 20, 30, some smaller number.
And there are copies of the draft ordinances that when it comes before the borough, and I believe that'll be at our next meeting. These might be on the agenda, and then we'll have discussion on the ordinances then, and just like every ordinance, there'll be 3 readings.
Right.
So, any other ideas in the room?
I don't know if everyone saw it, but Kurt Woolhitter asked me to have the original sales tax exemption ordinance available. There are some out there in the holder, just so everyone could see, the wording and whatnot. So he's not here.
This is
So
1980, Jody?
yeah, 1980, 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago.
Is there any problem in doing it by income? I know it's work, but...
I think it would be great.
Okay.
I think we could figure out a way how to do that somehow, but again, someone needs to, we can give you a blank, initiative petition to start the process. But I think, too, when the borough initiates something like this, a lot of people just will automatically vote no on it. So it's better if it comes from a different group.
But we're talking about just basically eliminating the tax exemption for the card. We're just talking about the fee.
Right. Well, if it's a fee, then it should match what it costs with everything amortized over, 5 years minimum for equipment and
Life
materials.
equipment will last. I don't know how long a card printing thing lasts.
And is it used by other departments, other things? You don't use it for other badges or anything, just for that?
Oh, no, we used to. When I first started 12 years ago, we used to have employee cards, but not anymore. There was an idea by an assembly member that wasn't here. The Water, Wastewater, and Sanitation Department, they actually give a discount to low-income seniors for their base rate of their water, sewer, and garbage. And it's if the all combined household income did not exceed $20,000 during the previous year. And that perhaps if someone just came in and signed an affidavit to that would, they would get a waiver that way. We could do something that matched up with that. Or we could do something like show your Medicaid card, which is about $20,000, the federal poverty limit. It's around the same number, so.
Is that number too low?
Some would argue that in this town.
I mean, you mentioned in your talk today with the radio that you were looking for, trying to get the people that aren't here and things like that. And the thing is, that if you have a high fee, the people that you're trying to get off the books, they can pay it and it won't bother them. And it affects the lower income people. So I think a fee higher than the bare minimum is probably better than 30, 40,000. I don't know what the numbers, your CPA could probably.
Jody, I was in a conversation today with a few people, and how long do you have to reside in Petersburg before you are eligible to collect these exemptions?
A year.
Okay.
No, well, it's worse than that because you have to have PFD, which can be up to 18 months or more.
It is PFD or equivalent, which some people argue, well, I don't file for my PFD. I mean, I deal with this like all the time. So then we usually go to their utility account and look to make sure that they have water usage that's not, that's reasonable for the past 12 years, or 12 months, excuse me. And, but yeah, it's a little bit of a process, and then they also sign something too, that an affidavit that says that they live here permanently. But I think there are a few people just squeaking by, but sometimes I have to deny people. It's not fun.
Yeah, I'm not quite tired of talking about this, but it's a tough process. I mean, my intent is not to burden the people in the community who can't afford it. I mean, but I'm just trying to sort out the details to see if we can sort it out at the assembly level. I mean, if we already have a senior discount in place for the water rates, can't we use that criteria to...
We could.
And is that a clean process or is that an ugly process?
Well, we would just trust them if they sign this. We give them, that they make less than $20,000 in their household a year, then we would give it to them. I mean, we have to. I don't know how. I don't want to start looking through people's tax returns.
No.
Right.
Would we have to
We don't have time for that.
put that on the ballot if we were actually going to take exemption away from a person? I mean, I know we're getting off the topic a little bit about a card. Charging for a card, if it's only the amount of what it costs to produce a card, I'm not too opposed to. But
Yeah, that doesn't have to go before the voters.
right, but I mean, as far as saying, well, your income's below X amount, so you don't even get a card. That would have to go
No, you would get a card, you just wouldn't have to pay the fee.
Waive the fee.
waive the fee.
I would say
Yeah.
Gotcha.
if you're below a certain amount, you don't even get it.
Yeah,
If you're above a certain amount, you don't get a card.
yeah.
Well, I would love that, but I think that might be argued that might need to go to the voters.
Yes. And then it won't pass.
All exemptions in Petersburg, unfortunately, per our charter, says that they must all go to the voters.
I think the easiest way to start is have a fee, have it be whatever, Jody, if it's $50, $60, whatever the cost of it is producing the card, charge that for the card, and if somebody signs an affidavit that they make less than $20,000 in the household, they don't pay the fee. Start with that
So-
and then work from there.
Just as someone who lives on $20,000 a year, that would be very difficult for very many people if it was even $50.
Well, no,
Like,
they
for
don't
some-
pay the fee. It would be waived.
Oh, but if you were just right above the 20,000?
Yeah, but like someone at like 22,000, like $50 means a lot
Oh,
to
yeah.
people on that margin. So like I would rather see this, because also we haven't done, all the votes that have been on sales tax or this exemption have been on the blanket number, but going out and making basically a moral argument of like, if you want this town to be successful in 50 years, we need to find a way to
Yeah.
limit this.
And we need to find
And it's true, like, you're absolutely right, that has not been on the ballot,
So-
just limiting it to low-income people.
Yeah, so that's a very different conversation because that's always been the thought that people have had of knowing that there's people on fixed incomes in town who are seniors, and that's kind of who a lot of people vote for when they go to the ballot with that question. So I think it might be worth it I would rather try that initiative process and have that conversation before the fee attempt, before bringing that, because I don't see, that's just nickel and diming people and putting more paperwork on the office, frankly, and nickel and diming people instead of getting to the actual root cause of the issue, which is people getting pretty massive sales tax exemptions who don't need it.
Gloria, Heather?
And I would totally agree with that. That is brilliant. When we started this, there was 10% of our population, at most, probably used it. And it was meant for lower income people to keep the elderly people here because they were having a struggling, keeping staying here. A lot of people left town because it was too expensive. We've got to figure out a way to do away with it because that number is growing. The number that's paying taxes is dwindling too because people are leaving town, and it's getting completely unsustainable. So even if we were to go out, I was thinking and pitch that moral argument like, hey, if this is a program you think you're worried about keeping it in place for your neighbor down the street, then would you consider giving your card back and not using it? I hear all the time, oh, I never use it. Oh, I never use it. Well, if you really do never use it, bring your card back and give it to Jody. And then you really wouldn't use it, and we could keep a little bit better track of it because it's going to take us under,
Well, and we're, we had 60 new cards this year. You know how many people in this town were born in 1952? Like, a lot. And we had some people that moved here, too, that finally were here for a year and could qualify. And we're not even at the end of the baby boomers. I mean, we have another, 7 years. So I'm terrified of what is going to happen.
Well, is it possible to do both? Is start the fee and then do exactly what Chelsea said and start the initiative process? But do something to at least cover the cost of the cards, because the initiative process is going to take a while.
What's up to the assembly?
Yeah. Bill Tremblay. I appreciate all the suggestions and the discussions. I agree with how the tone is going here, but one of the things I pulled out today was I was checking how Medicaid is identified as in this state for poverty levels, because people have different requirements, and the federal government does identify in Alaska poverty level.
It's like 130% or...
Well, and it's 130%, but they also graduate it by the number of persons in the households by income as well. So if you're looking at a definition rather than something arbitrary that we come up with ourselves, this might be a good base to work off, which is updated annually to look at as well. I agree with the $100 the fee because being a class of 54, I know in a couple of years I'll be eligible. But and with the criteria they list for the poverty guidelines, of course I wouldn't be interested in a waiver at that point either. But I do think it's worth our time to collect a reasonable fee for the tax card as it is. I mean, keep in mind that we haven't read all of what happened in this last tax bill, but most of the exemptions for things like our sales tax have now gone away. So with that going away, I have a feeling that some people might be looking for other edges to save money, and going to these cards might be a good way to go. So looking at that, I see more people coming in to probably apply for those things for the $100, and that's fine as long as we think we're getting something reasonable in return that's going to pay for the cards as well as increase revenue for the city.
Could you also just, as long as the card, could you also go and target just food and fuel?
So we tried that a few years ago. That went on the ballot.
I know.
It failed, although there's a lot of other sales tax initiatives.
that would have to
too
go on
on
the ballot?
Eliminate, yeah. So that's what Juneau does right now.
Yeah.
They exempt for seniors food and fuel and utilities. But of course, utilities in Petersburg are already exempt for everyone. So that isn't an issue. In fact, that happened a year after, in 1981, a year after the senior exemption was approved by just the city council. It didn't have to be voted on at the time when it was approved.
Just for Dave's information, Dave Berg just came in, we're talking about the fee for the tax exempt card on seniors, and then we're going to talk about the marine tax after
Okay.
that. But Brandy, did you have a?
No,
No?
actually, it was
Dave?
Well, my feeling on the senior sales tax exemption is that it could easily, I could see it be moved to a needs-based type of an award or grant, if you will, in that someone should be able to, for instance, show like a Medicaid card, which would qualify them as being at the level at which they would, need a sales tax exemption. For someone, over 65 and had a Medicaid card, for instance, that might eliminate the confidentiality of having to present a tax return, federal tax return, for instance. Yeah, I could see it going away except for on a needs-based, basis.
Okay, any other, Bill? You have other?
Well, seeing as how most of us can be able to file our income taxes on a postcard now, I also see that it probably wouldn't be as difficult to provide this information to the city, especially seeing as how they could be directed to what to redact to make sure that no confidential information is being shared. Name, income, and signature at the bottom might be all that might need to be shown to what their incomes are. So I don't think it's going to be laborious in the future if it comes to what was predicted.
And confidentiality, you wouldn't have to keep it, you could just have to show it.
Right.
And then,
Right.
so you have seen it, but you haven't
Nothing
made
on
copies
file.
of it or anything. It's not on file.
Right.
What is the process from after today? Is an ordinance then drafted, or what happens?
There is a draft ordinance for
Yes,
both.
right.
And so this is just to gather information from the public, the way I see this work session going. And the first reading of it will be whenever it's presented to the assembly, which might be the next meeting. And then the second meeting will be, then it'll be 6 weeks, 2 weeks per meeting. The second meeting will, like always, have a public hearing on the ordinance. And we could have another public hearing if need be. So,
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, I'm not married to the $100 fee. I could feel more comfortable selling the selling the $60 fee as the actual cost of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable
Yes.
fee to get it started. It could certainly get looked at in the future, but I'd also be in support of putting it on the ballot and explaining what it's doing to the community before we vote on it. I'm totally in support of that, but I'm just, like I said earlier, I was just struggling to make sure that the people who need it get it, and making sure that we're covering some of the cost of issuing.
Well, if you're going to give them a break, I mean, if they're going to be able to show needs and get it, don't have to get one, then make it $250 and phase it out. I mean, if that's what we're trying to do is phase it out, I mean, why make it $60? Everybody will come get it then.
Except
You
the people-
haven't seen any, but you've given an
Except for if they voted
exemption
on
to
it,
the
you can't
people that are needs-based.
But if you charge $250,
Right.
and the people that really need it aren't going to be able to put out the 250.
But they're getting it.
No, that's not in place yet.
Well, that could be because
That would have to be voted on.
we're instituting the fee,
I see.
We're instituted at the same time.
so
Would that have to go to a vote?
What?
because this fee, we're creating this fee, it's not something that has to go in front of the voters, so that means we can set the rules for how the fee is instituted,
Right.
which means we can set it so that if people are above a certain income level is when they have to pay the
Right.
$250.
You could waive it at the same
So it would be people under, sorry.
That level could be 25,000, and so if you are at 26, now you have to pay 250, that's pretty hard on somebody at 250.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Like,
You know, so, that being said, I mean, it would be one thing if it was like $100,000 and that was our limit, but, I mean, if we're talking 20, someone barely makes it past that break, and you're gonna charge $250, that's a lot to charge.
Well, if you get to 250, like I said before,
Just
then it
barely
becomes an
make it.
excise tax.
Well, and, I mean, I like where you're getting at with that, but I think it needs, an administrative fee is to
Oh,
cover
yes.
the costs.
Yes.
Well, then I think,
And then if it doesn't and it's more, then I think that's when it would need to go to the voters.
Yeah,
so I guess if you could
administrative.
come up with how many, you know, is it a week or 2 weeks of labor to process the, you spend about a week in the fall to go through all the cards?
Well,
and-
normally it's, you know, as people come in to get a card, because they haven't usually expired, you know, the cards before, the new ones that were just sent out had a 3-year term. We haven't figured out, you know, we haven't thought about how exactly we're going to do it. We're going to probably make sure, like, start sending out the cards this fall. I'm not really sure, actually.
Yeah, the ones that just came out for 1 year.
Yeah, they're just for 1 year because we were talking about a fee and things. So if this fee goes in place, it's not going to happen until next year's card, which
Oh, okay.
will be started this fall.
Okay.
And how the ordinance is written is that it would be good for a year, a calendar year. So if you come in and, if you move here a year ago and you're here and you
Right,
qualify and you come in in November and you want that sales tax card, you're going to have to pay $60 or whatever the fee the assembly decides for 2 months if you really want it for that calendar, and then you're going to have to pay another $60 for the next year.
So they all start at January 1st,
Yeah.
the card.
Yeah, which
for a
does
year.
create a bunch of work for us.
Yeah.
But, you know, at least we're going to be getting something back from it. And maybe if the card looks less attractive to people that can afford to pay the sales tax, then they'll start paying the sales tax. I mean, seniors are going to be mad also that they're going to have to come in again each year and get the card. That's going to be a huge thing, maybe bigger than the $60 problem. Yeah, so,
You could have where a relative could pick it up for them.
No, I think it'd
yeah, well, they're going to have to
Unless they're-
sign something and,
Yeah.
pay, and
There's no reason
so,
she can't come in.
you know, there's always something.
As seniors get older, they get cranky.
We do.
Yes, we do.
We know.
But if you've got an administration fee of, say, $50 a card, charge $50 a card. If you've got 75, charge 75 unless you're in the business of selling cards. I don't know.
Right, well, so I just can't go ahead and do that because you know how many seniors that I would have talking with me? And so that's why the assembly is talking about it and going to put it in the ordinance, some type of fee perhaps. And so then I can just hand them a copy of the ordinance when they say, why am I paying $60? It's in our laws. So.
Any other ideas? It's kind of,
I certainly hope that we go to a vote, and I hope that this time, if we do go to a vote, we keep it simple and not 6 different things on the ballot like last time. That was the other reason why it failed. Because this program has to go away. And,
Thank you, Deb.
I mean, when a third of our population and growing, it has to go away. And so,
not quite a third. 500 and
But it has to
3,000.
yeah, but the rest of them are young kids in a school, so you gotta factor, you know, there's literally, on my neighborhood, there's not very many people paying property tax and, you know, sales tax to boot, and it's crazy.
I
we
think
have
that
to
if
do away
you
with it.
drafted the fee, and you could follow it, because I think a lot of people don't vote for it because they're worried about the people that actually need it. If we drafted the fee thing and then use that to put it on the ballot for senior tax, it might go over better if people realize that the people that actually need it would still be exempt. I don't know, because has that been on the ballot before with an exemption?
For low income?
Yeah.
Just low income and not anyone else for a senior exemption?
Just, yes.
No, not that
And
I'm
I
aware
think
of.
that that's been an issue in the past, and people don't want to vote on it because they're worried about their neighbor that may actually need it.
Yeah.
So if you could draft it that where it actually had that exemption in it, it might actually, maybe, fingers crossed, go through. I don't know.
You have to do enough
Right.
verbiage to sell it properly.
Yeah. Again, I think it would help if it came from outside of the borough.
Absolutely. You mean the fee or doing away with it completely?
The people,
Oh, yes,
For-
I see what you're saying.
To vote on maybe just limiting it to low income.
But to put the fee on, that does not need a vote.
No.
But it also
Just a
won't
vote of the assembly,
Yes, a vote of the assembly.
of an ordinance, pass an ordinance.
Right.
And then as far as public, opinion, that's going to be, the perception is the borough imposing a fee because they can get away with it, because they aren't, so.
But it's an administrative fee. It's
Yeah,
the
but
cost
it's
of
still,
the
but it's still the borough imposing a fee because they can't get the public to understand that this is going to
No,
bankrupt the
That's not why
borough.
the fee is being imposed. The fee is being imposed because that's the cost of producing the card.
And
That's
because
what I
it's the
would-
only thing they're able to,
Yeah.
That's a start.
yeah.
So what I would say before you put the ordinance up for voting or anything, that, finance comes back and says what it costs.
Yes.
So you have a valid number, and you have something to go back to.
She's working on it.
While
Yeah, I
we're,
know.
Has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
while we're still on the topic of the tax exemption, I would be curious about extending the length of time when you need to be a resident of the state or of Petersburg to claim it. Because I don't necessarily think it's, the goal of it was for seniors who had paid for years into the borough to be able to then live here more affordably. And I don't think it's necessarily wise to become the place that people think they can move to dodge having to pay taxes. I don't think that's a long-term plan
I'm
that we
thinking that
want.
number should be around 50 years.
I agree with that.
Even-
Drop the 20.
Even 3 or 5,
Is that something that we can, as an assembly can, or does it have to go before the public if we change that?
That I'm not sure. That might be an attorney question. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe we can add to your list of things to do. Maybe you can look into that for us.
When we had, we put the language about qualifying for the PFD, that went to a vote. So I'm assuming that would too.
But that one might be,
But it might pass more, more than, so then, I would bank on that one would pass, extending the length way more over than just taking it away completely. And I like that idea.
Jeff?
Yeah. Over the last couple of weeks, months, we pay fees for almost everything, every service that we receive in the city. I mean, I'm paying a fee, I'm paying a fee for, the garbage and going to the pool and using the harbors, and I don't think the administrative fee should be something that we're looking at like it's the boogeyman.
No, it's not.
I agree.
I think, if we want to come up with a realistic fee of what it costs, and I think Jody's doing a great job getting things kind of narrowed down, and we look at putting it, as a ballot proposition to either get rid of the exemption and start a new one for needs-based residents in the community.
So just for the new people, we're talking about the tax card, the fee for the tax exemption card for seniors, and then we'll move on to the passenger, marine passenger fee, after we feel we've discussed this enough. Coming up with some actually discussion that I was kind of foreseeing happening, so, I mean, there's some decent ideas, so I like the idea of maybe making it more than a 1-year residency to be able to collect.
I don't think it's going to narrow down the number very much, though. I mean,
Well, you're probably right, but I mean,
there's not that many people that just moved here a few years ago. I mean, granted, there are some, but it's mostly long-term seniors.
But no
Oh,
better.
what about if you don't qualify for a PFD because you live somewhere else for 6 months out of the year? I mean, do you still qualify to get an exempt card?
I thought you checked the PFDs.
that's what Odie was,
No, yeah, we talked about that a little bit. If you don't qualify for the PFD or you said you didn't apply or something, then we check like water records for the last 12 months to
Okay,
make sure that you've actually been there for 12
I know
months.
some people that keep their water going or a house sitter or something. I mean,
Well, you can keep their water going but not have any, usually when you're gone, you don't have any usage, but because it's metered. But yeah, no, it's hard. Like, that's why we spend a lot of time on each card. Some cards are really easy because it's like, oh yeah, that person lives here, they're approved, they're everything, we see them every day. And other people are like, you really have to research. And I've called Wrangell because I knew that this person had another house in Wrangell to make sure that they weren't getting the senior exemption there. Like, you really research it. It takes a lot of time. And it's not uncommon to do that. So it's tough. So to prove someone's lived here for 5 years, I'm just thinking in my mind, how am I going to do that? Like, they could leave for a few years and come back. Like, that's some policing I might not want to do, but unless someone can think of some easy way to do it.
So how many other communities actually give this? I know Wrangell did away with theirs when they implemented
Their sales tax free days.
free days. So I don't know that there's,
Ketchikan does it.
do they do it?
Juneau does it to a limited basis. And I don't know any communities outside Southeast Alaska that actually do it.
I know my mom, who has a condo and does not take the tax exempt, she does not pick a card up, she doesn't pay, she pays her full property tax. She doesn't get any breaks down in Washington.
No.
She's 82
Oh, no.
years old.
No,
So,
no, this is a special,
yeah,
special.
very special.
Just everything has to go on the ballot here
right.
to do anything. For most
I know.
communities, you don't have.
Can't
It's
wait
not
any
like that,
longer.
exactly. It can be very frustrating.
Well, I don't see much objection from anybody in the room is charging a fee for a card.
No.
I mean, the cost of the card. So, I mean, that's a different topic if we're going to start talking about the tax exemption itself.
I think just so long as that exemption is in place for income-based folk. Other than that, I think that's great.
So shall we touch on the other topic a little bit? And then if people have another idea, we can come, about this, we can come
I have
back?
one more question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So if the end goal in October was to have a ballot initiative on maybe having the senior sales tax exemption for a needs-based community members, would we also have to do away with the original one that we have? So there'd be two ballot questions?
You have one replace
the other if we,
Okay.
I would
That's
sure think.
One to replace the other. Okay, thank you.
You'd be modifying the exemption that we have. And then we have to, I'm sure you'd have to have something similar to this, or just, I think you could do it if you advertised enough during 3 readings of an ordinance. If you start, advertising, you're going to put something on the ballot, take people's tax exemption away, or put a income level on it.
Do it before they all come back.
Yeah, we can't pick on the people that get to go on vacation all the time, but. So anyway, if there's no more ideas right now about this card fee, what are people's thoughts about imposing a marine passenger fee for people that use our borough for recreating or, I know, in my opinion, it depends on how much you generate from it, and how much it's going to cost to administer it. What's the net gain? You know, and there's other communities.
How many passengers a year do we have from?
I don't know. Jody, do you have that number? I know somebody worked.
No, Flo wrote up,
Flo, do you have that?
Yeah, I do. It's about 6,000 if all of the boats were maxed out.
Yeah.
I went through and got every single boat that comes to town, and I got all of their numbers, and, you know, and if they came 100%. So,
so it's about $35,000.
yeah, at most.
At $5
If
a head.
they were checker block full.
Which is not constant.
Talking to Levy and Heidi, I'd say maybe 80%.
Yeah.
full.
Because then there's fewer in the beginning, and
Yeah.
then mid-season, they're
5,000,
usually packed
so
up.
Times 5, times 5.
So then
And
if
there's
you-
supposed to be more, though, coming this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple more boats.
There's a guy that would know maybe what the predicted numbers are, Mr. Berg, but,
I don't represent all the boats, so.
Yeah.
oh, okay, right, yeah, you don't.
So, yeah, last year we had 103 stops, and right now we have about 116.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
10% more.
So what kind of fee are you looking for in dollar amount?
$5 was the number that was thrown out.
Did that include the French boat that came in, that anchored out?
But then this is also, the way I've read the draft ordinance, is for boats that have over 20 passengers, right? Yep. So then you get one that comes in with 18, and they use the services 1% less, or whatever the number would be, then yeah, I guess you have to draw a number somewhere.
Well,
Well,
the
also,
100-footers that are more like six-packs.
well, then anecdotally, as someone who works retail with the store that gets pretty much every one of those passengers, big ships or small ones, the smaller boats that are usually much more high-income earners, those are the ones that then spend a lot more and so contribute a lot more in sales tax. So, like, it's okay if we miss it. Personally, I think the $5 is great for the larger ships, because those ones are the ones that utilize a lot of the just basic infrastructure of town, but for the smaller ships, they're going to make their dent in another way in town for sure.
And how much is charged per boat that ties up at the dock? If there's a fee there.
If they tie in the inner harbor, like the loading zones, or ends of the float, that kind of thing, it's $400 a stop. If they lighter in, like the big French
Yes.
boat that tied up, or the ones that anchor out, then it's $250.
Okay.
And if they go to the drive down or the port dock, $500. We are the second most expensive to Juneau, so I can't, raising the moorage is the way. If the harbor needed to raise the money, if we go ahead with this marine passenger fee, I think it needs to stay within the, borough. I think it should stay on Main Street and not necessarily come to the harbor, because if we already have a vehicle, we call it moorage. If we need to raise rates, then we'll raise rates, which we are planning on doing, raising them 12% along with everybody else next fiscal year. So we'll see a little bit of a rate increase, and the general fund will see a little bit of increase in sales tax because of that. But yeah, so if we generate the $25,000 to $35,000, it would be, I don't know where what we would give the tourship companies.
But didn't Juneau just have a problem with a lawsuit because the money wasn't used for dock, or not docks, but infrastructure for the
Allegedly.
ships?
To support the ships when they came to town, I don't know
It
that.
wasn't for dock and infrastructure, right? It was for it's because it needs to go towards something that would better the visitors.
Visitor experience.
Yeah, I don't remember all the details.
It
There was
wasn't
something.
the whale. Bill, do you have a comment?
Not being recognized here. Yeah, they did a whale park, and they were upset that some of the passengers would leave downtown and make use of the whale park and walk back and not stay in their shops, I think. I think there's a little bit more to it than that, but it what it comes down to. One thing that I was looking at your ordinance is that recognizing that the state statute for recovering their passenger fees starts at vessels of 250 persons or more. We probably need to at least show the ceiling that we would collect for passenger ships up to 250. That way, don't we have a couple of ships that exceed 250? I thought that French ship at one point.
I actually
came close.
researched that,
Okay.
and they were at like 170.
Okay.
Now, we kind of mirrored our ordinance after Juneau's, and it was not in the Juneau ordinance. So, Juneau gets a lot of state head tax from, that they charge for because they get the big ships. But they also charge us $5. A passenger, they make about $6 million, $5 to $6 million. Whereas we're talking about $35,000. They're making $5 to $6 million a year, and they use it for things such as additional police, hospital support, because they have a few broken hips every week from passengers on the cruise ship, things like that. Downtown restroom maintenance and supplies, downtown sidewalk cleaning and garbage, harbor operations, visitor center building maintenance, transient bus service, downtown payphones. I mean, they have a whole list. And then they ask people to give suggestions to and things. I mean, they're a much larger scale, but.
Okay, I'm just curious about where you hide that, because I pulled up the Juneau operating revenue sources, and while they list the state marine passenger fee, they don't seem to show those other fees
I wonder
that
if
are
they put
collected.
it in a special revenue fund like we were going to do. They might.
And I know that looking at Sitka's too, where they have a, they call it their state marine passenger fee fund. And basically what they do is they isolate the funds that they get from the state taxes into that fund. I'm not sure that they collect any themselves beyond that. Is that right? Because there's something in here regarding, as far as the state statutes, regarding reduction of those levies for local taxes.
I have not researched Sitka, so I
Okay.
don't know what they're doing. Ketchikan also charges it's called a passenger warrant fees. They charge between $4 and $7, depending on different factors, whether the boat ties up to a private dock versus a borough-owned dock. But theirs is a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
But those are the only two. Wrangell does not have one. But Wrangell also actually gets some of the state head tax because they have a deeper port and they can have some of those big cruise ships visit. So
what is the state's head tax?
$34.50.
So it went down from 50?
Yeah.
I didn't know what it dropped to.
yeah. I actually talked with someone at the state a little bit. So I was like, well, we probably get some larger cruise ships up in Endicott Arm, that make their way to Tracy Arm, and they're like, well, they have to
They're on state
port.
water.
They have to
They have to
come
get-
visit. They're like, don't worry, we're tracking it for you. If they
Exactly.
come and visit, we'll send you some money. I was like, okay. Making sure.
And one of the terms was used in a draft ordinance, I think was, what's disembark mean? I mean, if they disembark off the vessel at the 150-foot boat that brings them there and get in the kayak, is that disembarking? Then do they have to pay the $5 fee, or if they don't touch land? I mean, how do you police that?
In the state, the only thing that's required for the use of the shoreline is there's a $5 registration fee, and that's it. On Forest Service lands, most of those fees are $5 once you get on National Forest System's land. So you may have 40 people in a boat, but unless that person gets off that day onto the land, you don't get to collect that $5.
Oh, really?
I mean, as long as they're floating in Endicott, they're floating still on state waters.
Navigable waters.
Right.
Some of the cruise boats, Nat Geo and some of those, don't go ashore because they don't want to pay whatever the fee is.
Yeah.
A lot of them do, though.
People on the boat.
No, a lot of them do. They have different locations where they go on shore.
Yeah.
And some are in between ports. Once they get to a port, if they're doing a tour, then the tour is the one that's obligated to pay those fees for the use of their operations there. But there are some places where they kayak, and if they know they get out on shores, there's some interpretive things they do on occasion in different locations, but they keep track of that, and they have to report that to the Forest Service and pay those fees.
How about if you get off in Thomas Bay and walk up the trail?
Yes.
Cascade
That's a
Creek
fee.
is a
The
fee.
that's
Yeah,
a fee?
yeah.
Or Ideal Cove?
They pay those fees.
Okay, Jeff had his hand up.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I know it's not a lot of money, but in a day and age where we're looking for new revenue stream, $35,000 isn't a big chunk, but it's a start. And
Less than
Dave's-
0.5% of the budget.
yeah, Dave's very helpful with me, kind of explaining the nuances. I don't call them tourists anymore, I call them visitors. Those are just things that are just part of the industry, and it's one of the things Dave, all of his help. And I think if we do get this as an ordinance in its first reading, I was hoping that the city could, or the borough, could reach out to the other members of the visitor industry to let them know that we're discussing it at a borough level. So we can hear their comments as well as anybody else who might want to start weighing in on it.
And also I wanted to say, Ed at the harbor, he hooked me up with this guy, Brett Farrell from the Marine Exchange of Alaska, and I'm going to hire him from May through September just to track for a couple $100 a month, to track all of the boats within the borough and where they're going, and give us a report monthly, just so we can see what's out there, and then maybe have a discussion next year at this time and just talk about, well, is there some other, revenue that we could collect or do things differently? So that's going to happen.
Dave? Mayor? Well, I know that there are lines that are operating in the borough that go ashore that don't come to town. And their ships actually do not dock in Petersburg. And so having those types of use of the borough land, I think, would be an important part of this. I also want to speak to the use of the funds. I think that if we were spending things on, or spending money on, access places, like Juneau's doing with, downtown, not payphones necessarily, but rest areas, or an area out on Dock Street, for instance, that would have a covered approach so that people could, while they were waiting for a bus, they wouldn't be standing out in the rain. Those types of things are certainly within the realm of acceptable uses of, money that is going to come from those passengers. Certainly it'll be paid to us by the lines, but it's, if you've ever seen, what it costs to go on a cruise, they usually have port taxes and fees added on to the end of it, and that's where this is going to go, And I think that if a ship docks or lighters, anchors in the borough and lighters people to Petersburg, that they should be, anybody on that passenger manifest should be included in this, not just necessarily the disembarking passengers.
Everybody on the ship.
Everybody's on the ship's manifest, because they have an opportunity to go ashore, and it would be a nightmare to try to keep track of exactly how many people get off.
Some towns around charge a fee per stateroom on the boat, the ship, and then a separate fee for each body that's on the boat,
Yeah.
the cruise lines.
Bill?
Yeah, and Jody, I really appreciate the fact that you're looking into what others have done. I really think that part of the sale and the discussion with others to pay this fee is to have a very solid breakdown of where the money's going to go. I don't know what committee you've put together yet to discuss that, or what ideas. I know there's ideas that can generate just in this room probably, but it'd be nice to have some open discussion about what you think might be like basic needs are. I know Glow has her, is that $6,000 toilet paper account there, something like that? Yeah. So I know there's some of that stuff that can be coming off off the top of the head of some of the division of the different members of your staff there. But then again, too, if you have extra money, where that might go, it'd be interesting to see where that goes. But it'd be nice to have something outlined with the basics before people start saying, let's collect it, because they really need to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, and we've written it up in the ordinance here. It's going to go into a special revenue fund for uses like we've talked about, maybe helping with ramp upgrades. Obviously, it's not going to build up very quickly. Just design, construction, enhancement, operation, or maintenance of capital improvements, operating funds for training, commodities, rentals, projects and programs that promote safety. It's very broad, so you can use it for a lot of things, and then the assembly will decide during budget time where, what they're going to spend it on. And it will be that's a public process in 3 readings, and people can offer suggestions, and that would be the cleanest thing.
Randy, you had
You just answered my question.
Ole?
One of the questions we were asked on Main Street from a lot of these visitors, where a public restroom was.
Yes.
And we point them her way.
Bingo.
But the businesses in town have to kind of provide it, and really, they don't have, public restrooms. It's there for their employees and stuff, but it's really not open to the public. And so you get 80 people wanting to borrow Dave's bathroom. At Viking Travel, we said, well, there's a travel agent, go check them out. And so the hotel had to close their bathroom to these people. And so,
Yeah, it's an issue.
so a bathroom would be, and not only then people get to use it, but it's open to the community also.
And when you set up this, could you make it eligible so that government entities would qualify, like the TRT?
Oh, yeah, I'm not
Government
gonna do the whole-
agencies were not able.
Yeah.
So I would go all the time and ask for things that would better enhance, because
Oh,
we
yeah.
get a lot of the visitors. And
Yeah, this wouldn't be like the tier.
good, because I would like to apply for all sorts of things from this money.
We talked about, when we remodeled this building, putting a public bathroom in the parking lot for that very reason. But we were trying to keep the costs down, and, so we didn't even plumb it. Not that that couldn't be done after the fact. But, it may come a day that we pick a corner of the parking lot and bring in one of those pre-built bathroom setups out here. But not currently in the plans, but.
And being in the public bathroom business,
No.
you want to have that under lock and key and somebody
But
standing
it's a
by.
legitimate concern.
Yeah,
The chamber has a bathroom, right? The chamber to use.
In the
And
museum,
The library.
library.
fishing game downstairs has one.
Is it a public bathroom or?
People use it all the time from the public.
Don't get that,
That's why we don't have an arrow.
Is it open 24/7?
No.
No, because the Harbors is open until I had to shut it down for a lot of reasons, but it's open 24/7.
So with any of this infrastructure comes expenses.
Babysitting.
Sure.
Yep.
So
Really?
does the fee cover it? That's.
Well, they have the ones that, the aquariums, and one person goes in,
Yeah.
you come out, and it sanitizes.
And it sprays, yeah, those are pretty cool.
Yeah,
I've
those are
seen
nice.
those before, yeah.
That's great.
They're all around the world.
Yeah.
Didn't work in Seattle. Had to
There's one
take it
there.
out.
Any other good ideas?
Well, how much do you think, say devil's advocate, what if we went with $10 instead of $5? How much would that affect business?
Well, just with my Sons of Norway hat on, it might really affect business. I know, different boats quit using Levy and Heidi over, a cookie or two. They quit renting the hall because for the dancers over $20 a stop, so it might, we haven't heard from the different agencies, but yeah, I'm sure we will. And I know every time we have a rate increase, it's a real consideration, so.
Yeah. Do you have a comment?
When I was in the travel business, Sitka put in a higher fee for the big cruise lines to stop, and this was years ago. Holland America for a year didn't stop in Sitka. They just bypassed it, and then finally they did away with that exorbitant fee. So whether additional $5 is exorbitant, I don't know, but there is a limit on what the cruise lines will pay.
Oh, yes.
Even though they push the money onto their passenger?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That fee?
Well, because a lot of those, like Holland and those are multinational, basically bullies, and they know that they have a lot of sway on the smaller communities. So I'd be curious about if we heard back from like the Alaska-owned cruise companies, if they were getting hurt by it more than, because those boats have 3 of them that come through town versus.
I've already heard, just in conversations, they wanted consideration because they were Alaska-based and because they were part native.
Yeah.
And so they thought they shouldn't, they should get special treatment in town using the drive down. That was their last request.
Well, and it is,
So
it is
I,
it's an interesting thing to consider, because also then that's a company that they have Chichagof, Admiralty, Baranoff. Is it just the three, or is there a fourth one that I'm missing?
Seems to me there's 4.
Yeah, so they have 4 boats that come through town
5.
regularly, yeah, as opposed to some of the, like American Spirit.
Is that
And so-
Allen Marine? Allen Marine? Or who,
Yeah.
what is that?
Allen Marine, yeah.
So that might be,
Prisons.
yeah, so I'm not sure how we could fine tune it in a way to not just, because they're already fighting a little bit uphill against these larger companies to stay alive, so it might be nice to try to find a way to, I don't know, if they get some kind of a break because they have so many ships that come through. I don't know. That's just,
well, and
Dave?
also deadheading here. Or
I was surprised that Jody told me that Alaska Dream was paying sales taxes here. And is that something that they can still do?
I think
You mean on
so.
the mortgage? Or on what?
No, for their use of, when they're in the borough, for their shore excursions and stuff that they had, that they were selling here?
Yeah.
So when they sell a kayak trip to their
Out of Petersburg,
passengers that go out of
too.
Petersburg, they're charged a sales tax on the value of that.
Is that a trip that originates from Petersburg? Or,
No, none of their trips originate here.
so,
it's just because it takes place here.
The kayak trip takes place here.
It's,
Yeah, weren't you saying that those happen in Hobart Bay and that sort of thing, too?
I think
Yeah.
so.
And they
That was
remit,
a long time ago, I can't remember.
yeah, and they remit sales taxes as a result, so.
Bill, you wanted to interject?
I was just going to say, it seems to me like it's just falling on the fact that they subcontract people to, or different outfitters and guides to service their clients, and so, of course, if they're selling things out of Petersburg, that would be subject to sales tax, like any business. So, and the other thing to keep in mind, too, as far as the instituting this, if it is to go forward, is that you're probably going to have to at least give a year leeway as far as lead time for people to incorporate that into their pricing system. I know that's something we had to deal with the federal government as far as prices and implementation of fees. So just give them time to be able, because I'd say they advertise like the ferry system, but the ferry system's been so unreliable, But
Like, good
that's
point, good point.
something to think about.
So, any other discussion on either of the two topics? Anybody have a brainstorm on the first one or anything? Well,
No, I thought it was very helpful.
there's some insight.
Yeah, it was helpful for me. It was.
Okay, well, no one,
Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing it.
Nope, you're great.